What's going on, friends? Today I'm going to be attempting to make this taffeta evening blouse that is a 1949 pattern from the magazine called Smart Sewing, which I found on Pinterest, and I will include a link to it in the description if you want to try it yourself. That is if it works. It looks like a little bit of a puzzle to put together. Not too difficult. It uses woven fabric, so it shouldn't be too tricky, and it does have some plausibility. It looks like it should come together to form a nice garment. What I like about it is that it's essentially based on a few different rectangles. Now, the pattern, I printed it out on a piece of paper, but I will include it in its full HD glory here. The pattern says I need 1.5 yards of gold striped taffeta. Now, I do not have taffeta to my knowledge, nor gold striped taffeta, so I'm gonna go have a look through my fabric closet to go see what I can use for it. Welcome to my tiny little fabric room. As I am reproducing a 1949 pattern, I want to use a fabric that is more appropriate for that time period. So probably won't be using something like this French bulldog fabric or these fishes. What should I use? Ooh! I think that I will use this pretty eyelet fabric. I've had this in my stash for a while now, and I originally think I must have wanted to make like a dress or something out of it because I have a lot of it. Those plans obviously fell by the wayside, but I definitely have at least 1.5 yards. It also says that the fabric should be at least 41 inches wide. So let's just check that. Okay, this is like 50 inches or something, so more than enough. Although I don't think it would be a problem to just add 2 bits of fabric together if it wasn't wide enough. Okay, so the pieces that I need. First I need a rectangle whose width is my bust measurement plus 3.5 inches. So my bust measurement is 38 plus 3.5 inches. Math is 41.5 inches by 17 inches long. So I'm gonna cut out a rectangle that is 41.5 inches that way, 17 inches this way. Wow, folks, she can make her own wedding dress, but she can't cut out a rectangle properly. What is this edge? Like, oh my god, this is so uneven. Okay, let me just even this up. And this is blunt. Oh, I'm struggling today. Alright, so this is rectangle number 1. Now it says to cut out the ruffles on the bias, so diagonally across the fabric. I don't think that is actually needed. I think that they only did that because they were using a striped fabric and they wanted the stripes to kind of like run like that across the ruffles. Give some nice contrast to the bodice. Instead, I'm just gonna cut them out grain-wise across the fabric. Okay, so there's 2 ruffles on the top. I need 2 long strips. I need 1 long strip that is 92 inches by 4.5 inches and another long strip that is 92 inches by 5.5 inches. So, I'm gonna cut those out from my fabric. I will have to join some long strips together, and that is perfectly fine. I just figured out that this fabric tears across the grain. I assumed it wouldn't because of the little embroidered eyelets. So I would have cut out a much nicer rectangle if I'd known I could have just torn it. Never assume. At least I know for this, and I will have perfect rectangles. So now I have 2 long strips that are 5.5 inches in width and 2 strips that are 4.5 inches in width. I am going to sew both of these together by putting them right sides together and sewing across here to make a very long strip, which I'm then going to cut down to 92 inches like in the pattern. So now I have my rectangles, 1, 2, and 3. I've got my body, ruffle 1, ruffle 2. So the first instruction is to get rid of those for now, and fold this in half, right sides together, like that, and straight stitch down this edge with, doesn't say the seam allowance, so I'm just gonna do 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now I am going to finish off both the seam on the bodice and where I joined together the ruffle pieces by pressing the seam open with my iron And then I'm going to do something that wasn't included in the pattern instructions, probably because this was just taken for granted that you'd know to do this. But I'm going to finish off the edge of each side of this seam by zigzagging down its length. Now you might be like, Annika, why don't you use your overlocker or even your overlocking stitch on your machine for this? Well, I'm going to use a zigzag stitch because I'm trying to do this somewhat historically accurately, and zigzag stitches started being included in home sewing machines in the 30s, I believe. So a lot of people would have had zigzag stitches on their machines, but not fancy overlocking ones. So that's why I'm using a zigzag. The second step is to stitch a 1/2 inch hem on the bottom edge and a 5/8 hem on the top edge. The top edge is to actually form casing for the elastic. Now again, this raw edge here, we got to do something about that. So I could either fold it up twice, I could either fold this up 1/4 inch and then another 1/4 inch and sew it across, or I could again go around all the edges with a zigzag stitch to prevent them fraying and then do the hems, which is what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna go around all of this and all of this with a zigzag stitch before I do my hems. Okay, so now I can do the hem and the casing. I'm going to fold the bottom up 1/2 inch. Where are my clippy clips? Where are my clippy clips? And then the top, I'm folding that down 5/8 of an inch. Actually, I'm gonna find the elastic I'm gonna use right now because I don't know if I have elastic that thin. Okay, so the pattern asks for elastic that's 1/4 inch wide. I do not have elastic that thin, so I'm gonna use elastic that is 1/2 inch wide, and therefore I'm going to increase my casing to 1 inch so that I can actually thread it through properly. Increasing that to 1 inch. Clippy clip clip clip, clippy clip and flippy flip. And now I'm going to sew my hem and my casing with my sewing machine with a straight stitch really close to that zigzagged off edge. Of course, for the side that has the casing, I'm gonna need a small gap to be able to thread the elastic through. Ho 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 ho. My bobbin thread, the bottom thread, ran out just as I finished my seam. Oh, that was close. Love it when that happens. The pattern instructions actually said not to leave a gap but to open the side seam after you sew it across. So that's another way to do it. It also then says to get 25 inches of elastic and put that through the top. But using 25 inches of elastic assumes that everyone is the same size, which we're not. So what I'm gonna do is get some elastic and wrap it around. I think that it's gonna sit about just above my bust. I'm going to wrap it around myself to a point where it's tight, but it's also comfortable. And then I'm going to add just like 1/2 inch because I'm going to be sewing it together in a loop, so seam allowance, and then I'm going to cut it off there. Then I'm going to get a safety pin, put it in one end of the elastic, and I'm going to thread it in through the hole in the casing and pull it through the entire casing. And then I usually hold the two ends of the elastic together with the safety pin until I can sew it in place. So I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and sew these two ends of elastic together to complete the loop of elastic. Then I'm just going to push that elastic inside of the hole there and sew over that gap in the casing. So currently we have a sack. This is not the most attractive thing I've ever worn, but hopefully the ruffles are going to fix that, so let's get on to that part. Alright, so up to step 4. Now I'm going to sew these long ruffles, both of them, into a loop by putting the ends right sides together like this, sewing here to finish the loop. Now we're up to step 5. I've got my 2 loops, and what I have to do apparently is a narrow hem on the top and the bottom of each loop. Now we have the same problem as back with the bodice, that this raw edge, if we don't do something to it, it's gonna end up fraying everywhere on like the first wash. So I'm gonna zigzag all of the edges, all of this edge, and then flip it over and all of this edge. The same on the second one. This is gonna take a while. And now I am going to do a narrow hem. I made a mistake. I just realized the instructions say to only hem one edge, and I hemmed both on one of these pieces, which took so long. Oh well, it shouldn't matter, so continuing forward. Okay, so the second part of step 5 is to bring the smaller, they kind of look the same size now because I accidentally hemmed the big one twice, whoops. But we bring the smaller one. Are these too close to the same size now? Oh my god, I'm gonna have to... Historical accuracy can bite my butt. Much easier. Alright, so this was the bigger ruffle, now it's the smaller one. I don't think it's gonna matter all that much. What I'm gonna do is, with these both, wrong side, facing out, gonna line them up. I'm just gonna use that little seam there to line them up with. Raw edges matching up, I'm going to pin them together around the top. And now I'm gonna sew the two together with a straight stitch along the top edge with, whoop, whoop, whoop. Doesn't say the seam allowance. Okay, so now the ruffles are sewn together. I'm gonna flip the smaller one over the top. Actually gonna press this seam out with my iron so that it's all nice and smooth along the edge. Yeah, so that it looks like that. The wrong side is facing up. And then on the edge that was just sewn, it now has this nice seam. I'm going to fold that over. The pattern says 5/8 of an inch, but I just need it to be wide enough to fit my elastic, so let's go... Where did my elastic go from before? Okay, I couldn't find my elastic from before, but I found some elastic that is 1/4 inch, which is what the pattern needs, so... Okay, cool. And now I'm going to sew this casing closed along here, all the way around the big loop that makes up the ruffle, leaving a little gap to put the elastic through, of course. So again, the pattern says to, in step 7, cut a length of elastic that's 32.5 inches, but that's just one size. That's not gonna fit everyone. So what I'm gonna do with my elastic, the ruffle is going to go around your shoulders, like this, around the shoulders. Gonna sit like kind of midway from the collarbone to between the nipples, basically. So I'm gonna make sure that's the right length and then cut it to that size. Ooh, the fabric is very bulky here. I really wish that I had cut the seam allowance a lot smaller between step 5 and 6. Getting the elastic through some of these places that would join together is impossible, and I have to actually open it up with my seam ripper, and it feels very strangely like I'm giving this work a cesarean, and that is then giving birth to... Look, it's nothing like actual birth, obviously, but I'm like having to cut this open and free. Ugh, where are you? Ugh, it's free! Which is annoying because I'm going to now have to hand sew these, which I was trying to avoid because I hate hand sewing with a passion. Is it ever possible for me to make a tutorial without making any mistakes? I don't know. No, I lost the other end of elastic. Why didn't I put a safety pin on that end too? Oh. Okay, I finally found the other piece of elastic, and this has taken the most unreasonable amount of time to do a simple elastic casing. It's these times where I'm like, actually, wow, I'm not good at sewing at all. Oh, and it's nailed, it went into the wrong section. And okay, finally got both of the ends of the elastic. I'm gonna sew them together to finish up that loop. I'm gonna put this whole experience behind us. So now I'm just trying to distribute the elastic evenly around the ruffle. Oh, this is such a twisted mess. I'm so worried about this. I don't know if it's gonna work. Oh, and if it doesn't, I'm gonna be very sad. It's gonna be a big bruise to my ego. Hello, it's a new day, and I have finished this ruffle. Didn't take me any time at all. I only got one more thing to do, which is to attach it to this bit. So following step 8, I just have to attach the ruffles at the front and the back and hand sew those in place. Hand sewing, my enemy. As you can see, I have stabbed myself already with my needle. And here she is, folks, the simple top that I spent way too long on and definitely should have just used an overlocker for. If this doesn't work, I swear to God. Time to try it on. This... Right, okay. Shoulders. Right, yeah, okay. Okay. Wait, these ruffles sure are ruffly. So roughly. I've ironed this. I also think it needs to be styled differently. Okay, we can make this work. Maybe I need to like just sew. Oh hi, it's lovely to meet you. Oh god. I'm gonna attempt to style this differently and see if I can get it to look decent, because I have not spent all of this time on this top for it to not work now. Here's the thing, your girl made some crucial errors. So it's okay, but the ruffles do stick up a lot, but it is probably because I got step 6 wrong, because apparently I can't read. In my defense, I have been super sleep deprived and the only way I can sew is by using a lot of painkillers. But I should have just stitched a new line at 5/8 of an inch instead of creating an entirely new fold for the elastic for the casing for this little ruffle, the bane of my existence. And that's why it was so hard to get the elastic through at the end there, and probably why it's ended up doing this. But as many of you have told me you like seeing when I make mistakes, so I'm uploading this anyway. Let this make you feel better about making mistakes of your own. So to properly assess the pattern, I retried it and it worked a lot better. Well, the ruffles still do like to stick up a little bit, but it's not as bad. I think that you can see how like bulky and how roughly this is. I think that a good idea might be to reduce the length of that ruffly piece, like down from 90 inches to like 70. Could easily take off 20 inches and make it just a little bit less ruffly. Still, a big issue with this top for me is if I'm not careful, the ruffles tend to end up around here, which doesn't look nearly as good. It looks a little bit like a floral clown collar. If I raise my arms like anywhere above 90 degrees. And hey, maybe a roughly clown collar is what you want, but it is not what I want. I'm just not that comfy still in this top. Maybe that's just a problem with off-the-shoulder tops generally, and they don't work that well for me. So if you like off-the-shoulder tops, you can probably tolerate that. But for me, I just feel like it's constant readjustment time. Who knows, maybe I'll still wear it. It honestly does look pretty nice, so I don't know. What do you think about it? Do you think you'll try this? Do you think that I have warned you away from it? Even if this mightn't have worked out 100%, I did really enjoy trying out just a random vintage pattern from the internet. It was a lot of fun. It was like a puzzle. So I want to ask a favor. If you ever come across any vintage patterns online, like similar to this one where it's just like a page of instructions, send them my way. Send them to me on Twitter. That's probably the best way for me to get those links. I'm currently really enjoying sewing things from the 30s through to the late 50s, so if you find things in that time period, I would love to give them a go. So I hope you all enjoyed watching me struggle with this pattern. We got there in the end. Stay crafty, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!